Okay, thanks so much for joining me. Well, for those of you who are in our course, none of this is probably going to be too new. I hate to waste your time, so don't feel like you need to stay if you're like, okay, I've heard this, I've heard this. But for everyone who is new to us, I really hope I can share a few tricks and secrets, if you will, on what to do to pass. So that's me many years ago. Oh my goodness. Doing a very crappy joint glide. Can't even tell me why that joint glide is so bad. Maybe I'm doing passive range. Let's say that. But my hand is not close to the joint line, right? Your hands need to be close to the joint line. Okay, so as I was saying, my name is Caitlin. I am a physio trained out of the University of British Columbia, UBC. I passed the exam 10 years ago. So wild, I guess coming up on 11 years ago. I went through both the written and clinical exams. As a Canadian, you have to pass all the exams as well. It's not only for internationals. All right, I like to show a 5-star review, and this one came in 4 days ago from someone so wonderful. So a few things I wanted to show you. I highly recommend this course to pass the exam confidently and avoid watching too long and too time-consuming lectures. The lectures are short, concise, and straight to the point, and the main manual is well organized to grab those essential concepts. Do not lose time in courses orientated for the NPTE. Who knows what the NPTE is? This is so important. And I've been diving into the NPTE hugely over the last few months, and there's such key differences. So please, yeah, it's the US exam. So don't be using US resources, US prep programs for this exam. Do not do it. Okay, because there are definitely noticeable differences. In addition to the main course, you have live office hours to get clarity and learn strategies to understand how to cope with the real exam. You won't regret investing in this course. How nice, eh? We're starting it off with a bang here. We are going to do a self-quiz. And what I'm going to get you to do is I'm going to get you to count how many times you answered yes when looking at these 10 questions. Okay. Your study plan depends on so many factors. And so my very first tip that I'm delivering to you today is to have a plan. And everyone's plan should look different, right? You are not in the same situation as your friend beside you, so it needs to look different. So please tell me, take a count, how many times did you say yes when reading these questions? Okay, let's make this all make sense. So honestly, if you're saying yes to these, it's just putting a tick into the category of you would likely need more time. Okay. If you've been out of school for more than 3 years, we know that historically your chances of passing the exam do go down. Now, is it down enough that it's not worth it? Absolutely not. It just means that we need to have a tiny bit different strategy for you. I just saw someone write 14 and it made me laugh. Okay, if you're working in an area of specialized physio, it just means that you're probably out of touch with some of the other more common or basic concepts. If you graduated from a school outside of Canada, obviously you've been kind of bred, if you will, in Canada to pass this exam. Outside of Canada, that's not their priority, although some schools really are. Is there anyone here from Brunel by chance? Anyone here from Brunel? No? Is there, I'm probably going to say this wrong. Is there anyone here from Gujarat in India? Yes. Okay. So we've been working lots with their school, and I really, really feel confident taking students who went there because we have such a strong understanding of what is not taught for the exam. So I bring up those two schools because I do feel like we've spent a considerable amount of time breaking down the concepts that are taught to you, and so we know how to kind of push you to where you need to be for this exam. So it's awesome to see so many of you here. Of course, children are definitely time consumers. They're also huge motivators. So sometimes you're more efficient when you have children. I think I'm in that category. I have two little kids, and if you sit me down to work, I am more efficient than arguably probably 90% of the population because I'm motivated to just kick butt for my family, right? Okay, do you work more than part-time hours? Obviously, that's going to take away from your time to study. If you're a slow learner, obviously it's going to take you more time. If you have a high level of stress, that is going to take away from your ability to focus. Exam anxiety, having failed before and studying alone, all of these things are check marks in the category of you're going to need more time. So let's make this make sense. If you answered 0 to 2 yeses, you're probably looking at about 2 months of part-time studying with full-time for the last 2 weeks. So this is typically going to be more around the lines of someone who is like a Canadian trained physio, okay? 2 to 5 yeses, 2 months of part-time studying plus 2 months of full-time studying is very realistic. And then if you said yes more than 5 times, we're looking at about a 4-month part-time studying plus 2 months of full-time studying. So you're looking at 6 months of prep for this exam. Okay. Definitely, I did see a lot of those kind of 5 pluses. So we're going to do another quiz towards the end, but just remember that you were in the category of kind of on the more side of the yeses, right? 5+ yeses. Just remember what your number was because we're going to talk about that. Okay. Ultimately, if you are unsure about your study plan, what I would tell you to do is definitely reach out to me. The more information you can give me when you reach out to me, the better. You can let me know which of those questions you said yes to. If you have a little bit of background you want to give me, anything unique about you, please include it in the contact us form. I will take a look at it and I can definitely help you. Now, I will say we have been so busy lately in the best way. I'm so thankful that so many people are trusting us with their prep. But with that comes, I can't just give away my time for free. So if I am going to help you with a study plan, I really hope that you come in with it with the integrity that you're going to be working with us. I have had people before who, use a lot of our resources as far as helping them create plans and then ultimately end up deciding to take a prep program that is maybe a little bit cheaper. Arguably, ours is really cheap with the coupon code though. And then they come back to me after having failed and they're like, I wish I would have just stuck to this plan. So don't end up being one of those people who say, I wish. Be one of those people who end up emailing me back and saying, I freaking passed, right? Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about the study plan here. Now, with your study plan, there's a few things you want to think about. If you are waiting for your credentials, who is that again? Can you just type C or me, something in the chat box so I know that's you? Okay, perfect. So for those of you who are waiting for your credentials to get approved, you're going to have a different study plan than those who have them approved. So one of the big things I want you to do in this stage is you're going to focus on anatomy. You can definitely use our anatomy workbook. I love our workbook because not only does it show you kind of the basic concepts, but it also integrates clinical understanding to make sure that you're taking it to the next level and not just remembering origins, insertions, innervations, actions. The exam's not going to test that. We're definitely going to talk about that more coming up. But ultimately, you should be working on your foundations if you are in this credentialing stage. Okay. You need to have a strong understanding of anatomy before diving into the higher knowledge or higher level questions. So, great place to start. Now, I also want you to go through aspects of the course at this stage that are just interesting for you. So we have a very structured study plan that we want you to stick to. But if you're in that credentialing stage and you're maybe not even sent in your papers, you can still start prepping with our program now. Okay, we do have an option that's until you pass. So we have people who are registering for our courses in like their, last few months of their programs, sometimes even earlier. And what I would suggest is as you are maybe going through something in your school, you can go and look at it in our program, right? See if what you are learning in school and what we are teaching in the program mesh. And if they don't, then that's your opportunity to kind of up your game for the PCE. Okay. And what I mean by PCE is Physiotherapy Competency Exam. It's what we call the exam in Canada. Now, if you're working as a PTA, look up cases that you saw that day. If you're not working, review content that just interests you. I know for me, there are certain areas that, like when I'm making mock exam questions up or when I'm making social media posts about something, there are some that I'm like, yes, I love this. This just fires me up. Like the recent post that we did about an Oreo. That's the second time I've made that video because I just love it. It's fun to me. I love kind of simplifying those concepts. But if you were to tell me to go and break down, I don't know, say like lung capacities and lung volumes, I'd be like, oh, like dragging my feet to get there. So honestly, you have lots of time to get to those difficult concepts once your credentials are approved. So in this stage, definitely focus on things that interest you. You can gain so much knowledge at this time. Okay. And again, we are seeing so many more people in this stage of pre-credentialing take our course because we just added the option of a timeline for the course of until you pass. Now, if your credentials are approved, you're definitely going to want to start using our study plan. We break down exactly what you need to accomplish in each week in order to stick to our 17-week study plan. Now, some people like to double this and do it as more of a 34-week study plan and just sticking to that. That's totally fine too, okay? Honestly, if you have less than 17 weeks, that's probably more common. I wish we were getting students a little bit earlier, but we are getting so many people. Like yesterday, I'm just looking, yesterday we had 3 people register for the May exam for our course. So it's happening. We're seeing people who are trying to do it on their own and they're trying to, maybe they've even purchased another prep program again. Maybe they're realizing it was not the support, not the materials that they were promised. And then they come to us in this panic. We can still help you if that's you. Is that anyone here right now where you're like in another program or maybe thought you could do it yourself and your exams like, May, April, July, something like that. And you're like a little bit panicking right now? Anyone? No? Oh, yeah. Okay. Mel's in that situation. We got one brave person, Maria. Yeah. So honestly, we do have options to support you. So Mel, Maria, please do email me. I'm going to throw our contact us information in there again, because I don't want you to feel like this. Yeah. We just had someone, they just sent it to me. If you're brave, send it to everyone, but they just sent like, I was, and now they're not because they're in the support of the program, right? Remember, our program is $1,000 with the coupon code, and to write the written exam is $1,300. So you don't want to fail because then you just spent more money than if you would have just invested in yourself the first time. So don't do silly math, do smart math and pass on your first attempt, right? Okay. Here's a little snapshot of one of the portions of the study plan, but ultimately the study plan is really, really important and it's super easy to adapt if you have less than or more than the time that's in there. If you are not registered in the course and you are not planning on registering in the course and you're like, I'm going to contact Caitlin because I want to know what to do, but I'm not planning to register, don't unless you want me to try to convince you, because I can do that. I can definitely make the math. What's it say, that saying, like if the math ain't mathin', I can make the math to make sure that you're going to pass. But the best thing to do is go to the blueprint, break down each category over the time that you have until your exam. Take time to consider what other topics could be under certain topics. Like one of them in the blueprint is ligament sprains and tears. You can imagine there are so many topics that are within there. Personally, I think the blueprint, not personally, I should say, I know most of us think the blueprint is not helpful. Who finds the blueprint helpful? Let's ask that. Anyone? It's going to be crickets, I know, because it's not very helpful. So honestly, take the guessing game out of it and let us support you in this. As you are coming into your final 3 to 4 weeks before your exam, a lot of you are getting into that situation here with the April exam. Who's taking the April exam? See me in the chat box. There's going to be a lot of you because it's been a very popular exam. I know a lot of people are just sending it to hosts and panelists, but there's a lot of you saying yes. So in your final 3 to 4 weeks, I really want you to think about purchasing that mock exam bundle. It is so great. The questions have all been updated come mid-February. So if you took it pre that, let me know. We have a coupon code so you can repurchase it. I shouldn't say they've been updated. We created a new mock exam bundle. Create your own questions while practicing. Make sure you're reviewing them at this time. If you did follow one of the strategies in the course of making questions up, this is the time to review your questions, switch them with partners. Definitely use our free resources. Are you ready for the list? We have a YouTube page. Here's an example. We have videos on our YouTube page that are really helpful. They're a little bit old. I haven't added new videos to YouTube in a long time, but honestly, the stuff that's there is really good. So you can get your free help there. Our Instagram page at PT Exam Prep. I'll throw the link in there because I always have to ask someone else to do it, but I prepped properly this time. Please go check out our Instagram page. If you're wondering what the heck I mean with the Oreo, you can go see it. It's the last video we posted. Actually, and we just did a roundup this morning of the top posts for March. So you can get a really good little highlight there. As well as you can use our free mock exam questions, okay? And those are all on our website. Head to our website. You can scroll down to kind of like the middle bottom of the page, and you'll see a bunch of free resources there. There's also anatomy workbook, a free little snap of it, or like snippet. There's a small part of the workbook there for you. So lots of options for you. We're going to talk about with the mock exam bundles when you should be taking those exams. I purposely planned this webinar at this time so that this is the time that you want to start taking those mocks. Create a goal each day and stick to it. So I have a stupid little saying, and it's called eat the frog. And it's a terrible saying because I'm like a heavy vegetarian eater, but eat the frog. What it means is think about what you need to do as you head into these last few weeks. Honestly, this is a little bit more specific for people who are closer to the exam. But if you're someone who is far out, the strategy works too. The idea is that you take a piece of paper or your phone or whatever you do to keep track of what you're going to cover in that day, and you make something the frog. You make something the thing that is, you look at it and you're like, no, I don't want to do that. So for me, maybe that would be on that certain day, it would be something to do with cardio rest, right? Something to do with pulmonary volumes or capacities. I'd be like, that's the thing I don't want to do. So the saying is, eat the frog. Do the thing that you're least looking forward to do first. And if the very first thing you accomplish in your day is something challenging and difficult, like eating a frog, then the rest of your day becomes really easy because you've already climbed to the top of this mountain, right? So that's a really good study strategy for you to use, is to always put the most tough things first. Your brain is also arguably the freshest as you start, so it's nice to try to do it then too. Alrighty. Tip number 2, oh my gosh, took me a while just to get to tip number 2, but tip number 2 is study for the physio exam in Canada, not for the American exam. Honestly, I mean this wholeheartedly. I am really, really focused on checking out this American exam, potentially writing it myself because I want to see it. And I've brought on some new team members who are a little bit more focused on the American exam. Spoiler alert, we're probably going to be going down to the States with our course in the next year, but we are not taking our course. We are making a new one. And I've seen so many people who have just copy and pasted their course for the American exam and they're making it for the Canadian, and this is absolutely not appropriate. And here's what we have found so far. When we're looking at the American exam, we're seeing that there's a lot of topics that are covered, a lot. Like we get so often people saying, do I need to cover this? Should I cover this? I did this on a score builders. I did this on a study buddy or final frontier quiz. Do I need to know this? And that is so difficult for you to be taking questions where you don't know if it is actually going to be assessed. This is actually very detrimental for your studying. And in this 3 weeks before the exam, I call it the wing-ding period, do not be doing anything from those companies. Seriously, it's just going to stress you out because you're studying things that could potentially really throw you off and absolutely not be examined. So the amount of topics on the NPTE are so much more. Now, the topics that are asked on the NPTE, you need to know less about them. So much bigger amount of topics, but much less knowledge about those topics. Versus when we go to the PCE, we actually have a much smaller scope of information that we need to know, but we need to know so much about those topics, okay? So this is my kind of diagram to try to make it make sense to you. I'm not just telling you not to use them because they're not my program. That's not it. I'm telling you not to use it because we see so many students get incredibly stressed and study things that they shouldn't, and then review topics in a level of depth that is not going to get them to where they need to be. Now let's talk about that level of depth. So I created this little diagram for you. This is going not quite in our written course. It's going to be going up in the written course in the next week or so. And that's kind of teaching you where you need to be able to pass the Canadian exam. Now, arguably, basic physiotherapy content knowledge is available through your programs in schools. This is a lot of what is covered on that American exam. So it's something as simple as if I were to ask you, what is the most common muscle affected in lateral condylalgia? Who knows the answer? Maybe another question would be like, what are the two types of COPD? Anyone? Do we have this basic knowledge down? Yeah, perfect. Chronic bronchitis, emphysema. The most common muscle affected in lateral condylalgia is ECRB. Perfect. So you do know this. So this is what I call nose. It's just like I ask you a question, boom, you know it. What about if I was to say to you, can you list some good treatments for emphysema? Just list something. What would you do for a person that had emphysema? Again, this is on that bottom of the triangle, just things you know. You absolutely need to know this for the exam. This is kind of your base, your foundation. You need to have it. Pursed breathing, beautiful. It's like I planted you guys. It's exactly what I wanted you to say. So awesome. You have that nose knowledge. But now, what about if I pushed you to the middle of the triangle? And that's a comprehensive amount of knowledge. And this is what I like to call the nose why. So why are we giving pursed lip breathing? So it's one thing to know that you would do it, but why are we giving it, right? When we get to that knows why, that helps us get to the very peak of clinical reasoning. And this is where you can make decisions. This is where you can pick between two answers that are similar. This is where you execute this higher level of knowledge to pick the right answer on the exam, right? And the reason for this is pursed lip breathing works by moving oxygen into your lungs and then carbon dioxide out of the lungs, right? We know these people are typically hyperinflated. So we're trying to create that technique to keep the airways open longer. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of you saying this. So the air will be removed that is trapped in the lungs, right? Slows down the breathing rate a little bit to relieve shortness of breath because of that positive end pressure. Open up the airways, open up the alveoli, get more CO2 out, right? So by knowing that it's pursed lip breathing is a treatment, just knowing that, you're going to get arguably maybe a question right, maybe not. But by knowing the whole reasoning why, you're going to get any question right so you can get to that decision making on the exam. Does this make sense to people? Why we're not going to spend our time in the course heavily working on that basic. You're going to get that. But the way that the course is structured is that we're trying to get you to the knows why into that decision-making process, right? And we're seeing this. If you have taken the exam before, you know that this is absolutely true, right? You know that just going in with physiotherapy knowledge, with having maybe prepped with an NPTE program, an American program, you're just not getting to the top of the triangle, okay? And that's why we're seeing these people fail. Okay, I was going to give you a little quiz question with this, but I think for the sake of time, let's keep going. If we have time to go back to this quiz question, we will. So one of the little tips I have to get you to this higher amount of knowledge is you can definitely start with the basics. We talked about origins, insertions, actions, innervations, good things to start at the start of your prep, but not things we're going to be using all the way through. You're going to be focusing on the basics while we build up your bottom of the triangle knowledge. This is a great place for cue cards. If you're someone who likes cue cards, I'm often telling people not to use them. Not in that I never want you to use them. I just don't want you to use them as you're in your middle and top of triangle. Okay. So use those things to get your basics. Then we're going to create the connections. Okay. So for example, if I were to say to you, what is an important feature of the superior lateral pterygoid? It could be something as simple as saying, well, I know it's attached to the disc. And why does that matter? Well, when that muscle contracts, it's going to pull that disc into a dislocated position into the anterior direction, right? So we're getting that anterior dislocation. I said the same thing, right? So again, pushing it to the why, same thing. A palsy to the facial nerve causes which pathology? Why? Why is that? right? So again, pushing, pushing. Now, I have a few tips that I like to use for this. Sorry, I have a bit of a cough this morning. You can create lists, select by certain aspects of, I didn't finish that sentence clearly. You can select kind of or understand why you would pick certain answers. I'm going to show you an example of this. And the last one is create compare and contrast charts, but that's going to be tip 3. So here's what you can do. You can get 4 bowls. You can have beautiful 4 matching bowls. You can have totally ravaged different bowls if you want. But in your first bowl, you can put in a bunch of different pathologies. Maybe put in some things that you're not that great at. Maybe put some things that you're really good at. You know, aim to put maybe 10 to 20 in, put 5 in, whatever you want. But you could start with these if you want to. So what you would do is you would put those in your first bowl. In the second bowl, you would put in some clinical context. So maybe private practice, public, home care, community. Then you would go to your tasks. So tasks are going to be things like maybe what treatment would you do? What would you educate on? Who would you collaborate with? Who would you refer out to? Maybe some ethical situations that could approach or could happen. And then maybe other factors. Maybe there's no support. Maybe they're elderly, they work full time, they have no free time. The options are endless here. Maybe they have multiple comorbidities. So then what you're going to do is in your 4 bowls, you're going to pick one piece of paper from each. And from there, you're going to have a scenario. So let's say we have someone who has carpal tunnel syndrome and you're seeing them in a home care situation. And the purpose of what you're going to do is education. And they are someone who is elderly, and maybe you pick 2 in this one and they have no support. So you're going to think about, what are you going to do for this patient? How are you going to educate that patient? Versus maybe you keep carpal tunnel syndrome out and now you pulled another one and you're in private practice. Maybe you pulled another one and you're doing education. And maybe you pulled another one and they're pregnant. Now, what are you going to do? Task is still about education, but you've created a new vignette for yourself of what are you going to do for this scenario. Does this make sense? Yes. Cool. Awesome. Really happy that this makes sense. Great. Shirley, I love that answer. Okay, flying to tip number 3. With tip number 3, I really want you to work on compare and contrasting. Again, this was something in my list that I just gave you of how to create these connections with knowledge, move away from bottom of triangle, get to that middle and top of the triangle. And so what you can do here is you can group together similar pathologies to help recognize what makes them different. Because one of the most challenging ways that you'll see decision-making needed on the exam is situations where the answers are all correct and you have to pick the best one, or situations where the answers are very similar and you have to pick the best one, right? So here's an example. Let's think about neurodegenerative diseases. These are arguably a little bit similar, but there are some key differences. So can you list 3 neurodegenerative diseases? Is that word hard? Neurodegenerative diseases. Love it. Parkinson's, MS, myasthenia gravis. Beautiful. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. Here we go. Let's take a look at what we did. So we can look at something like ALS, maybe Parkinson's and MS. I like grouping these 3 together because I do think they're quite similar. So this is a snapshot of our manual. We put a lot of compare and contrast into our manual for you. And you can see one of the first topics, this is a large chart, I just took a small picture of it. One of the first charts is talking about pattern of progression. So when we look at the pattern of progression, it looks different for ALS and Parkinson's and MS. But you need to know this, right? You need to know that in ALS, the weakness starts peripherally and then moves centrally, okay? Again, bottom of the triangle knowledge. Now, why does this matter? Why does it matter that it starts peripherally and moves centrally? Well, a little bit later in the chart, we talk about treatment. And with our treatment, we are going to select the best answer that deals with moving with things peripherally first, because that's what they're most affected by. But we also know that when we're moving centrally, we're starting to get more lung involvement. And at that point, if we're in a situation where there's more central involvement, the lung is going to be our biggest priority. Breathing is going to be our biggest priority, right? So having that base of your triangle knowledge helps you be able to get to that higher level knowledge. I sound like a broken record. Okay, same thing with MS, right? We know our pattern of progression depends on what type of MS they have. right? So when we went back to that little bowl that we were talking about, maybe something you could do to kind of push your knowledge would be maybe putting in the 4 different types, right? Maybe you do a relapse and remitting. Maybe you put a primary progressing in there. This is all things that you can do to try to create these knowledge and again, move up the triangle. Okay, next question I'm going to ask you here is what would you compare and contrast for these? So when you're looking at chronic bronchitis, what's something that you would compare and contrast that to? You should know this. I asked you it earlier. Chronic bronchitis and emphysema. Yeah, those are beautiful ones to compare and contrast. What about something like a pneumothorax? What would you compare and contrast with that one? I always get different answers with this, and it's totally fine. It's whatever you want to do. I like tension pneumothorax too. A hemothorax, I think that works great. Pleural effusion, sure. Compare and contrast them. Do the work now to separate the conditions in your head, or do the work now to figure out, oh, those are actually quite similar. Those have similar processes. That's one less thing I have to memorize because I know they're similar. Okay. What about carpal tunnel syndrome? Yeah. Oh, I mean, actually, you sent it just to me. Too bad, but you got it. Boom, right away. Anyone else? What are you gonna do? Actually, you should type it to everyone so you get the credit. Verna, same thing. No one's saying it. Verna, but actually, type it to the group. Thoracic outlet syndrome. That's a big one that I would compare it to. I completely agree. Awesome. Okay, so we're done tip 3. We're heading to tip 4, and I got 10 minutes to take you through the rest. So tip 4, my big one is practice vignette style questions. This is so, so important. So what is a vignette? A vignette is a paragraph or case followed by a series of questions that are related to that case, right? Now on the exam, you're gonna see 200 questions. You have 4 hours to do 200 questions. 180 of those questions are vignettes, 20 are standalone, meaning you have a question, you have your options, and then the next question you see after that has absolutely nothing to do with this. Versus vignettes have, you're reading the same case with those vignettes, okay? So some big tips here, do not rely on standalone questions. Who has a standalone question exam? Like their whole exam is standalone questions, no vignettes. The American questions. The American exam is actually changing. It changed in January. However, so many resources are still standalone questions for that American exam. A lot of free things out there are standalone questions. You really need to use these sparingly. And please, if you are going to use them, promise me you don't use them in the wingding period, which is 3 weeks before your exam. Okay. Now, if you're going to use standalone questions, you need to use different timing. If you're in our course, we have a whole section on timing and pacing, so you know how long you should be taking. But if you are doing NPTE questions, please only take 45 seconds to answer those exams or those questions, okay? Very important. We have questions for you to practice. We have 115 questions in our ethics masterclass. We have the 10 free questions on our website. We have our 5-day study challenge. We have our mock exam bundle, which has 3 sets of 200 questions. We have 2 mocks in our premium and live course. There are so many mock questions for you. If you end up taking our premium course that includes the ethics masterclass and the Until You Pass subscription, you're getting over 950 questions. So many practice questions. So you don't need to stress about using American questions, okay? Now, again, remember, we really do believe that you will start to see more and more ethics questions on the exam. So part of my, tip 4 is kind of like a bonus tip, is that you need to practice ethical questions. If you are prepping for your exam and you are not at the very least in our ethics masterclass, this is the time to do it. Ethics masterclass is only $149 for the first month. So if you're taking April, you can take it now and you don't have to pay the $15 per month afterwards. But it is so important. We're seeing these questions to be so highly concentrated on the exam. Okay. I put in some blueprint examples of things that we're seeing these questions around, but ultimately, again, the blueprint is quite vague for people if you haven't spent, 10 years of your life looking at it. Okay. Again, here are a few more blueprint examples to show you, but honestly, if there's a big thing that you take from this webinar, it's use us to help you, but definitely use us to help you with ethics, okay? I'm going to take half a second to kind of talk about this because I do feel like this is the number one thing you should be studying. And that is we have compiled all this information into the Ethics Masterclass. These topics are covered in detail. It teaches you decision-making principles. Each question comes with detailed rationale. You get unlimited attempts of these questions. And we really do suggest that you start early because before every exam, and we have 10 exams a year, so before every exam, we have a bonus session. Now, the bonus session is available to people who have either purchased our mock exam bundle, the Ethics Masterclass, or our full course, because in the full course, you get both of these anyways. So here's the thing. If, say, you purchase it now and your exam isn't until maybe September, you are going to have the opportunity to attend every single one of these that we have. Okay, so you pay $15 a month to be in the Ethics Masterclass and you get all of these, which is so nice, right? You will immediately, when you register, get an email inviting you to the next one. But at that point, you can either just say, register for it if you want, or if you're in the ethics classroom, you can just go to the top and you'll see the links for the ones coming up. I know that might sound a little bit confusing, but it's really simple. My purpose of all this is to say that you definitely want to be a part of this ethics masterclass and the mock exam bundle because it's going to prep you for these questions. Again, we just did a complete update to our mock bundle. If you are someone who has previously taken it before February, contact us and we'll give you a coupon code so you can not re-access, I keep saying that, but so you can get the new bundle at a discounted price. Okay, really, really important. I want you to stay focused when you are taking your mock exams, okay? You really want to try to mimic the exam. So don't drink water, try not to take breaks, get your room set up so that you're in the situation. Go through the exam in the 4 hours. It's super important. When we are training for something that is long duration, the longer you can train in that kind of longness, if you will, the better you're going to do on your exam. And I can tell you, most people don't take 4 hours to do their exam. Most people are taking 5, 6 hours by the time they have all their checks, the security, any little hiccups. You do need to be prepping for more of like a 5, 6 hour amount of attention. Okay. One of my favorite sayings in the whole world is don't practice until you get it right. You're not just shooting, tons and tons of darts at a board and then you get it one time in the middle and you're like, boom, I got it, I'm a pro. No, you need to keep practicing until your dart hits that center every single time, right? We need you to move your knowledge from the bottom of the triangle higher up. And you need to be doing it with every single topic and you need to be doing it with confidence. So the best way to do that, I think, is to be a part of our Until You Pass written course. It starts your prep early on. So you're creating these connections, you're creating this knowledge so that you're not, blasting your knowledge into your brain in the last month. You are working on this. If you are, somewhere internationally right now and your goal is to come to Canada, start soon. You don't have to be on a solid prep of doing hours and hours each day. It could be maybe an hour a week, but you're just getting your brain into this style of learning. We are experts. I feel very, very confident in saying that. There's no one else who has been around as long as us. There's no one else who has the team that we do. We have 31 teachers at this point on our team. You see my face, but there's a whole team behind this, and we are here to support you. Go check out our Google reviews. That is the best unbiased, review you can get. Okay. Already kind of talked about the fact that we are experts, but if you are someone who maybe just wants to learn a little bit more, maybe you're wondering if the course is right for you, please let me know and I can connect you with students. Okay, I'm going to give you a quiz here. I've got 4 more minutes of your time. So what I want you to do here is I want you to write down if you have are more A's or more B's, okay? And I will just say question 5, when you get to question 5, if you are answering C, then you would give yourself an A and a B, okay? That's all that means. But I will be quiet for a minute. Let me know if you're more A's or more B's. Okay, if you are someone that said more A's, that's typically what we see. We actually had a large number of people do this quiz when we were kind of putting together some eligibility, if you will, for like who would be best fit for which course for us. And so ultimately, if we are seeing that you are an A or a B, here are the personality profiles that we have put together. So take a read through this and then just type in the chat box, yes, if you feel like this describes you as a more A person or a more B person, or type no if you don't think it describes you. Okay, do you think this is you? Does this feel like, yes, this is me? This is definitely me. Okay, so here's what we did. We then found, okay, yes, most people agreed that this personality profile, that's so funny you said that, Savannah. Some people kind of floated between the two. It was like, depending on where I'm at, I'm kind of between it. But ultimately, here's the courses that we suggest for you. So you can do the premium course in Ethics Masterclass with the coupon code. It brings it to 1,000. If you were one of those people who said yes more than 5 times, you're gonna want to opt for the Until You Pass option. It brings the course just to $12.49 then, but it gives you an Until You Pass subscription and an additional 600 practice questions. Okay. If you are someone who said more Bs, here's what I want to say to you, more Bs people. I would love to get you to an A. I would. I think that if you are someone who thinks that you need all the support of a live teacher course, I would like to talk you into finding that motivation, finding some strategies, finding some more techniques to help you get to the place where you could be an A. Okay. And the reason for that is we see people who do the personality type of Bs, it is harder for them to pass the exam. So ideally, we push those people to be able to find out how to get to a place where they are in a better kind of mental, so non-content related, but they're just in a better mental place to be able to pass. Okay. So if you were a B, yeah, you could take the live course, but you could also spend half as much if we could get you to the point where you're a bit more of an A. Okay. Um, and remember, anyone who is on a third attempt, if you are here right now and you are potentially doing a third attempt, there's absolutely no way. I feel very strongly about this. I would put my career on the line. You need to take the live course. Unless you don't really care about being a physio, then fine, go for the premium. But you need external assessment of your knowledge, because if you're on a third attempt, there's a few things that could have happened, but arguably the top ones are going to be that you have a poor ability to assess your readiness, or you have made poor decisions in the past that thought you could do this on your own, or maybe with some other prep program, and you are in a situation now that is highly anxiety provoking, and you're going to need some support. Okay. All right. So the last thing I told you I would talk about is when to take your mocks. So there's a few different reasons for why you would want to take a mock. You need to figure out, are you trying to take a mock to figure out if you should defer to a later exam? Are you trying to figure out where you need to focus your studying? Are you trying to figure out if you should take a course? So any of these things are going to give you a little bit of a different lens of when you should take the exam. Ultimately, now we know the exam is happening so often that that ability to defer can actually happen quite late, right? So you could do a lot of your prep, but we want to figure out if you're ready kind of within that last month before the exam, right? If you need to figure out where to focus your studying, that's great. Checking your knowledge, that's great. We're going to have an awesome plan for it. And ultimately, if you need to find out if you need help preparing, you can take one of those exams at any time. I would probably save them if you could and just take one of the mocks on their website that are free to just see like, how am I doing? Rather than, wasting, if you will, one of the full mocks, because it would be nice to have that later when you've done your actual movement of base to the next levels of the triangle, and then we put it all together in a mock. Now remember, the questions in the mock bundle are completely unique from the questions that are in our course, okay? So here's one of the schedules I like to give you, and that is take mock exam 1 whenever you need to. If you're wanting to take it early again to figure out if you are going to defer, if you want to take it to find out if you need more prep, you can take it early. But if you're in that situation where you've done the work, you've built the bottom of the triangle, arguably you're in that middle to top, this is when you're going to find your gaps in your knowledge. So 1 month to 3 weeks, mock exam 2, maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and mock exam 3, arguably 1 week before. Try to take it more than 3 days before if you can, because there's going to be things that are popping out of things you need to work on. Okay. I've already talked about this as far as our course. Happy to give you any information that you want about this, but make sure to use the coupon code Study Smarter to help you get to that lower price. But I'll head to the chat box to answer any questions that students have. Okay. Canor is asking, what mark do you need to pass the PCE? So really good question. They followed up by saying, I've been working through the course and it has been great so far, organized and easy to follow. Thanks so much for the nice compliment. So what I would say is the exam score is definitely fluctuating. They set the passing rate before anyone takes the exam. So there's not, and no one could possibly tell you what score you need. No one gets access to that information. What we have is we have data. We have a lot of data. We have hundreds of you who take our mocks before the exams. And so what we do is we follow up with you after the scores are out. And we say, did you pass? Did you not? How'd you do? And we then can say, okay, this is what you scored on our mock. And this is what, did you pass or did you fail? And we can put those data points together to say, okay, what did we find was kind of the cutoff of what people need to get on our mocks to historically go and pass the exam? And we're seeing that around the 70 to 79%. There's a very high correlation between if you're getting over 70 on our mocks, you are likely to go on and pass the exam. Now, we see a much higher trend if you're above 80. Pretty much at that 80 mark, you're not failing. We just don't get people who fail the actual exam if they score over 80 on our mocks. Now, when we get under 70, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to fail, but it definitely sees a higher trend of people who fail. But it's all about what you do with these mocks. It's about finding these errors and fixing them, making the mistakes now so that you don't make them on the exam. Okay. I have 138 on a mock. Do you think I should reschedule exam as I have planned it in May? So, great question, Natisha. So I think I kind of touched on this before. It doesn't necessarily matter what your scores are as long as you're finding those gaps and you have time to fix them. So arguably, if you're taking May, you definitely have time to fix them. Now, fixing gaps in your knowledge can be easy if you're in the course, you have access to that information. But if you're not, then it makes it hard to fix those gaps. It's like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So if you're getting a poor result on the mocks and you've done the work, whatever your work was, and you go back and you do the same thing, that's not going to get you to where you need to be. If you're finding holes in your knowledge, you need to do something different to fix them. Okay. When would you register for the exam, assuming your credentials are approved? Great question, Tess. So I think it's going to come down to figuring out what your study timeline is. So kind of goes back to when we talked at the start of the webinar. Are you one of those people who said yes a bunch of times, maybe in the middle of the range yeses? Figure out how much time you need to prep and then pick an exam based off that. Roma is asking what hours are considered part-time versus full-time. So part-time to me is anywhere between 20 to 30 hours per week. Full-time is anywhere between kind of 30 to 50 hours per week. Now there definitely is a range, and that's why when you're going through your study plan, we give you these targets that you need to hit. So if you are falling behind on those targets, you know you need to put more hours, more time, more focus. If you are keeping up the study strategy and study schedule, then you know that whatever hours you have are appropriate. I'm not about guessing in this process. There needs to be no guessing. We are so able to connect data to decisions, and that's what you should be doing on this exam. So you should not be guessing how much time you need to be studying each week. You start, you see how you do. If you're falling behind on the goals that are within the course, you know you need to put more time in. How often are mock exams updated? I took the premium course in 2022. I couldn't guess. So here's the thing. Our mock exams are all updated February of this year. And when I say updated, I mean we did a full new mock exam. So if you're in that situation where you took the mock exam in 2022, contact us for your coupon code to get access to the new bundle. Okay. Oh, these scores of people who scored 597, so close to the 600. Honestly, the thing is I always tell people who get those scores very close is that you were close on that exam. You're not going to see that exam again. So you're going to need to prep again, right? And you need to prep as if you never saw that score of 597 out of 600, because honestly, we just don't know what's going to show up again, and we don't want to waste attempts. We get 3 attempts and that is it. There's no more. There is no more. Don't say that to scare you, but I say that so that you take this seriously, right? How many months do I get access to the premium course if you started the course in May? So every time, if you're registering for the course, you are going to get access for 6 months unless you are purchasing the mock exam bundle as well. And that creates an until you pass option. So Toby, if you are wanting to increase to an until you pass, just send us a message. Anyone who previously purchased the course, we are giving you this offer too. How many hours do you suggest studying every day? I think I kind of touched on this, but depending on what your study strategy looks like as far as how long you have, we do have calendars in the course. We have different weekly schedules so that you can break this down for yourself so you know what you need to be spending as far as time goes. And again, it all comes down to data. If you're falling behind, you know you need to put more time in, right? This makes a lot more sense when you get into the course. I promise it's all really well laid out. Right now, it's like the hardest section because you're trying to understand something by not having all the information. But once you're in the course, it makes sense. Okay, the written exam is online. Can we give it from our home country? Absolutely. The exam is offered through virtual proctoring, so you can take it anywhere in the world. Savannah, okay, was asking about what's the cutoff score for our mock exams to indicate that you are ready or should defer. So again, I did kind of talk about this a little bit. Ultimately, we're looking for you to get as close to 80 as possible, but 70 to 80 is that's like a nice little spot to be in. Anything above 80 is you're good. Anything below 70 is not necessarily saying that you should defer, but it is saying that there's key things that you need to work on. And as long as you work on those, arguably you should be okay. Narul asking, can I upgrade my course? Yes, you can. Just send us an email, okay? And our email for everyone is info@ptexamprep.ca. I'll type that in the chat box for you. Okay. If I'm going for the May exam and scoring 120 to 140, what strategies do you suggest? I think I talked a lot about strategies in this. This was all about strategies. So hopefully you use the strategies that we spoke about here. Okay. Awesome. Well, it looks like we covered all of the questions there. If you do have other questions, definitely just shoot me an email. I didn't get the link for the premium course, but I'm going to send this to you in an email really, really shortly. So you have the link to this course, but it is on our website. Or if you're really wanting it right away, shoot me an email, and we do have staff that monitor the inbox. So you will get an email back pretty soon. Okay. I went over big time. I'm so sorry. I always like to respect your time, but there are lots of great questions. So I'm really, really hopeful that we can be a part of your journey. We have a huge team who only work at getting you through this exam. So I do believe we're the best option to help you prep. And I really, really hope that you get to be part of the PT Exam Prep family. And remember, if you take your written course with us, you get huge discounts on your clinical course. So it pays to, number one, get through the exam on your first attempt. And as well, you also get huge discounts on our clinical. So hopefully we'll see you in our courses. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.